Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we take your sources, articles, research, whatever you send us, and we really try to pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights.
Yeah, the goal is basically giving you a shortcut, right, to being genuinely well-informed on something.
Exactly. And hopefully we hit you with some surprising facts, maybe a little bit of humor, and deliver those aha moments you're looking for. So today, our deep dive is all about one single source. But it's a big one, incredibly influential, often pretty controversial.
We're talking about the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Right. People often call it like a modern Machiavellian masterpiece, which basically means it digs into the practical, sometimes amoral strategies for getting and keeping power.
Sort of like Machiavelli did centuries ago, yeah. It strips away the politeness, the nicety.
Totally. It's very frank about manipulation, about power dynamics, what happens behind closed doors.
And we should be super clear right from the get-go. Our mission here, it's absolutely not to endorse manipulation. We're not trying to turn you into some kind of villain.
No, definitely not.
This deep dive is really about understanding. You could say it's about learning self-defense.
Self-defense. I like that framing.
Yeah, because if you grasp the game, you're much less likely to be played. It's about gaining clarity, maybe some light to defend yourself, or just to move smartly through tricky situations.
Because you actually understand maybe the darker side of human nature that Greene talks about.
Exactly. Knowing it exists is protective.
That's such a crucial distinction, and really it's the whole point of digging into this book today. So what makes Greene's approach so, I guess, unique? Why does this book still resonate so much decades later?
Well, I think what's truly fascinating is Greene's whole methodology. He didn't just invent these laws, right? He distilled them.
Right, from history, a lot of history.
Over 3,000 years of it, yeah. Pulling insights from figures, people as different as Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese general, and Henry Kissinger.
Wow, that's a huge range.
It is. And the book itself, it becomes this incredible synthesis of psychology, war tactics, human behavior. It's all woven together.
And it really does, as you said, strip away the sugarcoating. It reveals these maybe uncomfortable but universal truths about influence and control.
Stuff most people prefer not to think about, honestly.
Exactly. And I think as we unpack some of these, you'll probably find yourself having those aha moments, seeing how they play out. So should we just jump into some of the laws, the ones everyone seems to talk about?
Yeah, let's do it. When you think about the absolute classics from the book, what pops into your head first?
Well, Law 1, right. Never outshine the master. That's almost always the first one people mention.
It is. It's fundamental in Greene's view.
Okay, but it sounds simple, maybe. How do you actually apply that? Especially today, when everything tells you to stand out, be brilliant.
Right. It seems counterintuitive.
Is it really about, hiding your talents, or is there a more strategic angle Greene suggests? Managing the boss's ego without completely dimming your own light forever.
That's a great question. It's less about totally hiding your talent, I think, and more about, strategic deference. That's a good way to put it.
Strategic deference.
Greene often implies that making your superior feel indispensable, making them look good, even if you're the one doing the heavy lifting. That actually cements your own position. You become their trusted, non-threatening asset.
Non-threatening, that's key.
It is. The deeper insight, maybe, is that power often flows through the master. So by appearing to serve their ego, you actually gain a kind of influence over that flow.
Can you give an example?
Well, the classic one Greene uses is Nicolas Fouquet.
Okay.
He was Louis XIV's finance minister.
Okay.
He threw this incredibly lavish party, trying to impress the king, but it actually just overshadowed the king's own grandeur, made Louis feel insecure, maybe jealous.
Ooh, bad move.
Very bad move. Days later, Fouquet was arrested, thrown into prison for life.
Wow. Okay, so the lesson is clear. Stroke the master's ego, don't threaten it.
Pretty much. Don't make them look bad or feel less important than you.
That is a tough pill to swallow for some people, I bet. Especially when, like I said, we're taught to always stand out, show our best work.
It definitely goes against a lot of modern advice.
Okay, so then there's Law 3, conceal your intentions. Now, some people might hear that and just think, okay, that's just being deceptive, lying.
Yeah, it can sound like that on the surface.
So what's the strategic insight Greene offers there? Is it more than just being secretive?
Well, this kind of raises a bigger question about strategy itself, doesn't it? While, it could involve deception, Greene often suggests it's more about timing and leverage.
timing and leverage. How so?
Think about it in, say, a negotiation, or launching a new business venture, or even, I don't know, dating. If you broadcast every single plan, every intention right away, well, you basically open the door for other people to sabotage you, or maybe just get there first, preempt your moves.
Right, you lose your advantage.
Exactly. The strategic power, Greene argues, lies in not revealing your hand until the moment it best serves your purpose. It lets you keep an element of surprise, control the narrative.
So it's like strategic silence can be a power move in itself, not just hiding things for the sake of it.
Precisely. It's about controlling information flow to your advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's talk about some of the laws that sound, frankly, pretty brutal on the surface.
Uh-oh. Which one are you thinking of?
Law 15, crush your enemy. Totally. I mean, that sounds incredibly hard.
It does sound harsh, yeah, no question. But Greene's argument behind it is, well, it's about avoiding future problems.
How so?
He argues that enemies you only half defeat. They tend not to just go away. They often regroup, learn from the defeat, and come back stronger, more determined, maybe resentful.
So leaving embers glowing can lead to a bigger fire later.
Kind of, yeah. So the law isn't necessarily advocating for, like, cruelty for its own sake. It's about finality, ensuring the threat is fully neutralized.
Okay, finality.
It's sort of like Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon River. Once he did that, there was no turning back, no half measures, no partial victories allowed. He was committed to total victory or total defeat.
I see. And what's interesting here, maybe, is that your enemy doesn't always have to be a person, right?
Absolutely. That's a crucial point. Your enemy could be a persistent bad habit you're trying to break.
Like my procrastination habit.
Exactly. Or it could be inner doubts holding you back, or maybe even a toxic partnership, or a failing project that needs to be decisively ended, not just tinkered with.
So if I've just been partially addressing my tendency to hit snooze, Greene would say I need to, like, cross my own personal Rubicon and just absolutely crush that habit. No more negotiating with it.
That's the spirit of it, yeah. Half measures against something deeply ingrained, whether it's a habit or even, say, a really difficult client relationship that's draining resources. They often mean the problem just festers or comes back stronger.
It requires decisive action, a clean break, maybe?
That's the idea. Finality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that reframes it a bit. Now, speaking of our current world, Law 6, court attention at all costs. That feels incredibly relevant today, right? In the digital age, the attention economy.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost prophetic in a way. For anyone trying to build something online, content creators, entrepreneurs, artists, you name it, attention really is currency. It's vital.
But how does Greene suggest navigating that? Because at all costs sounds dangerous. You could become notorious, infamous, not famous. You could lose substance.
That's the critical nuance, isn't it? Not all attention is good attention. Scandals, huge controversies. Yeah, they get tons of attention. But that kind of attention can destroy you, burn you out completely.
Right, so it's not just any attention.
Exactly. The goal, as Greene implies, is to court attention with intention and purpose. You need to think about what kind of attention you want and ensure the attention you gain actually serves your long-term goals.
So it enhances your reputation or your project rather than just making noise or, worse, detracting from your substance.
Precisely. It's strategic attention-seeking, not just desperate attention-seeking.
It is fascinating, though, how much attention itself is the currency now. But then you read other laws in Greene's book, and sometimes, well, they seem to say the exact opposite.
Like which one?
Like Law 4, always say less than necessary. How do you square that with Law 6, court attention at all costs? Be loud versus be quiet. It seems contradictory.
Yes, the apparent contradictions. This is actually where the true trick of applying the laws lies, I think. It's all about understanding context and the fluidity of power.
Context and fluidity. Okay, explain that.
Well, think about, say, a startup founder again. In the very early stages, maybe Law 6, court attention at all costs, is absolutely paramount. You need buzz, you need investors, you need users, you need to make noise.
Right, gotta get noticed.
But maybe later, once the company is established, maybe it's facing serious competitors. Perhaps Law 4, always say less than necessary, becomes much more important.
Why?
To prevent those competitors from figuring out your next strategic move. To not give away your leverage in negotiations. To maintain an aura of mystery or control.
So it's not that the laws contradict each other fundamentally.
It's more that they apply differently depending on the situation. The phase of power you're in, maybe. Your goals at that specific moment. your audience.
So there's no single playbook. You can't just apply Law 6 all the time or Law 4 all the time.
Exactly. You need situational awareness. You need to read the room, know your audience, understand the dynamics. Sometimes, yeah, silence is your greatest strength. Other times, a bold, attention-grabbing statement is what's needed.
It requires judgment, discernment.
A lot of it, yes.
Okay, so let's bring this back to the listener. For someone who maybe just wants to navigate their career or their personal life without getting tangled up in nasty power games, or maybe they just want to recognize these games when they see them, how can you use this book defensively?
Yeah, and this circles back to what we said at the start. This is probably the most important practical takeaway for most people.
That's a self-defense aspect.
Exactly. By understanding these laws, you start to recognize when other people might be using these tactics on you. Maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about that coworker who seems excessively flattering, always complimenting you, trying to find out what makes you tick, what your weaknesses are.
Okay.
They might be employing, consciously or not, something like Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Trying to find your vulnerability to gain leverage or influence.
Ah, the thumbscrew, finding someone's insecurity or desire.
Right. But once you recognize that pattern, that flattery doesn't just seem nice anymore. You see the potential strategy underneath.
And that awareness is protection.
Absolutely. Awareness is protection. Once you can identify the potential underlying strategy someone might be using, the manipulation loses a lot of its power over you. You're not blindsided. You can choose how to respond proactively instead of just reacting.
That makes a lot of sense. You see the move coming.
You see the move coming.
And speaking of the strategy involved, we should probably touch on Greene's writing style itself. Because it's a huge part of why the book is so impactful, isn't it?
Oh, completely. It's not a dry textbook. Well, it's dense. It's very historical, very visual, actually, and aphoristic. Each law is stated so bluntly.
Yeah, those short, punchy law statements.
Right, and then each law is presented almost like a mini essay. It's packed with these incredibly rich stories, examples from history.
Figures like Napoleon,
Talleyrand, Bismarck, various Chinese warlords, Catherine the Great. List goes on and on.
So it's not just theory. He shows you the laws in action through these historical narratives.
Exactly. It's like this vibrant, complex chessboard of history unfolding right in front of your eyes. And by seeing all these examples, you start to recognize the patterns yourself across different times and cultures. It makes the laws feel timeless, universal.
Okay, so let's maybe try to recap some of the core ideas we've explored in this deep dive into the 48 Laws of Power.
Sure.
We definitely hit Law 1, never outshine the master. And that cautionary tale of Nicolas Fouquet and Louis XIV really sticks with you, that need for strategic ego management.
Managing upward effectively.
Yeah. And then Law 3, conceal your intentions. We talked about how that's less about pure deception and more about the strategic power of timing, of selective revelation, especially when the stakes are high.
Right, controlling the information flow.
We also looked at one of the harsher sounding ones, Law 15, crush your enemy, totally. But we reframed it, thinking about finality, whether that enemy is another person or maybe just a really persistent bad habit like procrastination, the Caesar crossing the Rubicon idea.
The importance of decisive action.
Yeah.
Avoiding half measures that let problems fester.
And of course, we couldn't ignore Law 6, court attention at all costs, especially how relevant that feels now in our digital attention-driven world. But with that really critical nuance, it has to be attention sought with purpose, not just noise.
Good attention versus bad attention, essentially, serving your long-term substance.
Right. And we also tackled that fascinating aspect of how some laws seem to contradict each other.
Like Law 4, always say less than necessary, versus Law 6, court attention.
Exactly. And the key takeaway there was that it's not about rigid rules. The real trick, as you put it, is understanding the context, knowing your audience, the specific situation, the fluid nature of power itself.
Yeah, there's no single universal playbook that works for every person in every situation. It requires adaptability.
Which brings us right back, I think, to the main benefit for you listening right now.
Yeah.
Using this knowledge defensively. Recognizing when others might be deploying these laws, like that overly flattering coworker possibly using Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew, recognizing it strips the manipulation of its power.
Awareness really is your best shield.
Absolutely.
And, it's worth saying again, Greene's craft, his writing style, it's powerful. These aren't just abstract principles. They're illustrated with vivid, detailed stories from centuries of history. That chessboard of history really helps you see the patterns.
It makes it compelling, even if the content is challenging.
Definitely.
So after this whole deep dive, maybe we leave you, our listener, with a final kind of provocative thought to chew on.
Yeah.
Should everyone read the 48 Laws of Power?
That's the big question, isn't it? My take.
Yeah.
The powerful conclusion is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Really, even with all the controversy?
Yes. But not necessarily to become a master manipulator yourself. The real reason is to become immune to manipulation, or at least much more resistant to it.
So knowledge is inoculation.
Exactly. This book,
Yeah.
it won't magically make you good or evil. That's not its function. It just, metaphorically speaking, gives you a sword. You still decide how, or even if, you're going to use it.
That's a great analogy. The tool itself isn't inherently good or bad.
Precisely. And remember, at its core, power isn't just about dominance over others. It's also fundamentally about awareness.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, awareness of others, awareness of dynamics. It's about discipline, and ultimately about making conscious choices.
So we encourage you to reflect on how these insights, these patterns might apply in your own life, the situations you navigate every single day. Hopefully understanding them allows you to move through the world with maybe a bit more clarity, more understanding, and more agency.
Well said. Knowledge is power, but awareness is the foundation.